You know, we can talk about quality and you can talk about making products that matter for people, but when all of a sudden it's your family member saying to you, hey, Pete, I'm thinking about getting one of your products. Is that the right move? Yeah. To be able to answer that question and be able to say, absolutely yes, because you know the culture of the company, you know the people that are making it, that makes it pretty real really fast.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. I'm flying out to Las Vegas this week to give a presentation on why podcasting is a great way to network and build a community. And I've been writing this presentation and this speech and thinking it through and thought it might be nice to just share some of the insights real quickly that I have and I'm going to share with the folks that I'm speaking for. And it really is about a connection. Podcasting has this innate ability to really make a close-knit group of people come together. There's something about the medium where when you decide to take your time, whatever you're doing as a listener right now, maybe you're running on the treadmill, maybe you're mowing the yard, maybe you're, doing whatever, you decided to take the time to zone out a little bit and really learn something from a podcast or hear a story, be entertained, have an experience, right? Podcasting has an innate ability to do that. And I think that's why it's so valuable for businesses to engage in that. I really don't think it has to be about the podcast doesn't have to be about the topic of your business. I mean, if it fits and if it's educational and it's entertaining, if you are a comedian and you want to have a podcast about comedy, great. Like if you want to educate people about something that they really want to learn about, maybe like cars and those kinds of things, and maybe that works. But for something like insurance, or some other service industry, maybe the topic of your business isn't what your podcast is about. But I still think your podcast builds a community of people by connecting all the folks who are interested in whatever topic that podcast is on. So our podcast is Scratch Entrepreneur, right? It's the stories of business owners and how they do the business they do. Not only how they grew up into their space, but how they solve problems, how they fix issues, and how they celebrate successes. That's what our show is about. And if you're tuning in, that's what you like about it. And so if you've considered creating a podcast, I would love to encourage you to do so. Find out a little bit more information. Consider the topic and how you would engage with your audience. What's the why of your podcast? Why are you creating it? And why does it create value for your listener? And then go for it. Get some equipment. You can start under $100, or you could put $500 or $600 into a slightly nicer scenario. Or a lot of towns like Bloomington, Indiana, have studios you can use at no cost at all. Our main library here in Bloomington, Indiana, has a studio you can use at no cost at all. So I'd encourage you, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast, connecting with a community of people by sharing information with them, laughing with them, educating them, and bringing them onto the show so that they can share their insights as well. Definitely do that. And if you have an idea, go to Scratch Entrepreneur on Facebook and tell us about it, and we'll dig into that idea with you and maybe help you make it a little bit better. Our guest today has worked up the business ladder in a way that's just amazing. He's the president of one of the largest businesses in Indiana, and certainly in Bloomington, Indiana. He's the president of Cooke Medical, which is here in Bloomington, Indiana, and all over the world. They make medical devices. He'll talk about that in the interview. But he's also starting a podcast, kind of like ours, really to sit down with people that he enjoys, that he's interested in, that he wants to hear their story, and put that down on tape so that other people can listen to it too. We talk about a lot of things in this conversation, but really how running a big business works, some of the things he loves about it, some of the things he's not as good at, and how he figures all those things out. So I hope you enjoy this interview. Pete Yonkman of Cooke Medical. Pete, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So we start off every episode with a great podcast you're listening to, some kind of podcast that maybe our listeners haven't heard of before, or maybe they have, and they can try and listen to as well. So what's something you're listening to right now?
Oh, I'm always listening to Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin. I'm sure people have heard of that. So obviously he's a famous guy and famous podcast, but he has the right combination of, he asks the questions that you want to know about people,
Yeah.
But he's funny. Obviously, he's has a great voice. He also just has a way of making people relate, and so he gets really personal information from people, and they feel comfortable with him.
Yeah, right.
And the conversation just always takes a different turn than I always expect it to. So I find that one always to be entertaining.
So he's interviewing people in that, and
Yeah.
just like sitting down with actors and musicians, or
Everybody,
whoever.
actors, politicians, writers,
Yeah.
just people on the street sometimes. So has a whole bunch of different things going on.
Okay, cool. So tell us the name of the podcast again.
Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin.
Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin. Okay, I'm adding it to my list.
All right.
One great thing about these conversations is I hear a new one every time, and so then I listen to that podcast. So if you look at my list of podcasts, it's like all the ones that have been
How do you
suggested.
have time to listen to all those podcasts?
Walking from place to place,
Yes.
riding my bike.
On your scooter, you're right.
Yeah, I have ridden the scooters a couple times in Bloomington. Like our office is right on the square, and I come over here to the mill, which is 6 blocks away. Something
Perfect
like
scooter
that.
distance.
It's perfect scooter distance. So if I need like a 15-minute walk, I walk. But if I'm running late or something and need to get over here, I just hop on a scooter. And
So where we're out on the west side of town, it's not really perfect scooter distance.
right? No.
But I did sort of kidnap a scooter from downtown in my car and took one out to Cooke, and I was riding around our fountain out there. That was kind of fun, actually.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, they kind of move. It's fun, and you probably shouldn't have headphones on and listen to podcasts while you're doing that.
If you have a helmet on, then yes, you can.
Okay.
Well, probably not. I don't know.
Cool. All right. So let's dig in a little bit. I want to just talk about Cooke to start with, and a little bit about your role there, and go from there. So you really are, and you probably know better than I do, but the president of one of the largest life sciences businesses in Indiana. I guess, is that?
Yeah, it's for sure one of the biggest in Indiana. It's one of the biggest in the industry, from the medical device industry.
Huh. So for someone who doesn't know Cooke Medical, what do y'all do?
Yeah. So this is the way I describe what we do to people who aren't in the industry. The company was started by Bill and Gail Cooke back in 1963. Really sort of that true American story of just in the spare bedroom of an apartment. When they started it, you go back to the 1960s, if you were sick and you went to the hospital and they didn't know what was wrong with you, they'd do exploratory surgery.
Yeah.
And exploratory surgery sucked.
Like literally open you up and see what was going on.
Open you up and start digging around your insides and
Right.
say, is this okay?
Yeah.
That was not good.
Right.
A lot of hospital stay, tough recovery. Well,
A lot
there
of
was
infection and I mean, yeah.
all the things that go with
all
that.
the stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And so in the 60s, there was a physician, Sven Seldinger, in Europe, who was playing around with the idea of putting a hollow needle into one of your arteries or veins, and then taking a piece of wire through that hollow needle and putting it into the needle or vein.
Right.
Leave the wire inside the artery.
Right.
Pull that hollow needle off. So now you just have a wire in
Right.
your artery.
Yeah.
And then over top of that wire, you run a catheter, a tube, a plastic tube. And then you have the plastic tube in there, you can pull the wire out. Now you have access to the entire body through that little plastic tube.
Right.
And physicians figured that out, and they said, oh my God, we don't have to cut people open anymore. We can now go anywhere we want in the body through this plastic tube. We can run wires up there. We can run balloons. They started to be able to diagnose disease, and they started to treat it.
Yeah.
And so interestingly, Bill heard about this and said, I'm going to sell a needle, a wire guide, and a catheter. So those first 3 products that physician in Europe was using, so I'm going to start selling those here in the United States.
So the idea wasn't his necessarily, but how to do it well and how to do it right all together in a product, the tools to do it.
The tools to do that minimally invasive surgery. Bill was one of the first to do that. And he was right there. I mean, think about how the wave of minimally invasive medicine spread over the next 50 years.
Yeah.
It spread not only through medicine, but it spread throughout the body. So, they started figuring out, well, if you need to do urology, if you're looking at urology issues, well, we can do that with minimally invasive. Or, we can do scopes down your esophagus to see what's going on in your stomach.
Yeah.
All those things need tools, and we were the company that built those tools.
That makes so much sense. I'd never really thought about how medicine was before you could do something like that. If you have a problem with your stomach, the idea of having a scope to look at it and see what's going on, or has a problem in your blood system or a problem with almost any system at this point. You just kind of do a minimally invasive thing. You go in, come out, maybe they had to put you out a little bit or whatever, and then they can find out stuff without you having to recover from a surgery.
It wasn't that long ago. If you had a heart attack, there was nothing they could do for you.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally made you just put you on bed rest. Maybe gave you an aspirin.
Right.
My grandparents were that way. So, that's a big difference in not that many generations.
Absolutely. Wow. So this minimally invasive surgery idea is relatively new. I mean, 40, 50 years that we've been doing
60
that.
years, yeah.
Yeah. And so Bill Cooke and Gail Cooke got connected with it by creating the tools that do that.
Yep. So they created those first 3 tools.
Yeah.
And then as physicians started to say, well, boy, it would be great if our catheter could bend this way or take that curve in the body, or boy, if we had a little bit different size, different material, or okay, now we've come to an artery that is blocked. What could we do about that? Well, maybe we could add a little balloon on the end of it that would help
actually unblock it. Yeah.
And then, well, maybe we could put a stent in there or a wire tube that would help keep it open.
So you see how we can open it and fix it.
And treat it. You can diagnose it and treat it now without having to do any open surgery.
So the relationship between physicians and Bill Cooke at first was obviously huge. I would imagine that the relationship between physicians and what you all do is still a huge part of your forward progress, right? Yeah.
That very first 3 products were developed in coordination with a physician.
Yeah.
Almost every product that was developed thereafter was a physician idea, a physician request, or some sort of input from the physician saying, hey, my patient has this problem. Could you come up with a technology or help me do this? That's been the history of our company throughout.
And I think almost for any entrepreneur, I mean, this is a really clear way that some feedback came to you and you said, okay, well, let's fix that. Oh, here's a thing. It doesn't have a solution. Let's find a solution. But I think the better that entrepreneurs listen is the lesson there. Like they listened, and that was how your business evolved.
Absolutely. So, if we went back and asked Bill about the history before he passed, that was all he did. He used to say, I don't have customers. I have friends. These people we're in the mix together. We are in this fight together. We're trying to make patients better, and we're trying to figure this out. It was like almost like an engineering collaborative sort of free-for-all of how do we advance this? And you go back and you think about the early days of anything.
Yeah.
Far less regulation, far less understanding, far less science.
Yeah.
You're literally just trying to figure out, well, what metal would be safe to put in the patient? What kind of plastics are safe? And so they're having to work through all these challenges. And they were in the foxhole together trying to figure that out and make these revolutionary discoveries.
A little bit off topic, but I did a presentation yesterday to investment property folks. And I said, a healthy, profitable business has only 2 elements. It has to make money or it's not profitable. And it has to help people. And I think every single time you make a decision as a business owner, it's like, is this going to make money? It's a reasonable question. Is it going to help people? A much more exciting question, and one that Bill really had his finger on the pulse of. And I love the way he said it. Like, we're all friends here. We're all in the foxhole together. We're all fighting this thing, and we're going to win. Yeah.
So that was he would always talk about, don't worry about making money.
Yeah.
I don't care if it makes money. I don't want to see the analysis. Just tell me what it does for my customer and for their patients.
Yeah.
Does it make their life better? Is it making their job easier? Yeah. And if he saw that, it was like a light bulb would go off. Oh, there it is. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'd be a small product, and sometimes it would be a monster.
Yeah.
You don't really know until you get out there and you figure it out. But when you see that light bulb go off of, I'm solving a problem for something else, making somebody's life easier, that's something you can do something with.
Yeah, gosh. And I feel like that's so much more fulfilling as a human. Like, when you're like, oh, this would really help. This would help people. And if I do it and no one else is doing it or it's not being done well yet, this group of people their lives can be made better. And I think it's awesome.
It's so much more fun to do business that way. Now, I will tell you, we have some products that it's an uphill battle to sell.
Yeah.
And has been for years. It sells, but it's an uphill battle. But boy, if you have something that rings a bell for a customer and immediately you see that look where they know that all of a sudden their life is changing because now I can do this.
Yeah.
That's so much more fun to sell than something that's a little bit uphill battle to sell.
Yeah. I mean, you are literally changing people's lives. I mean, there's like on the concrete, not even just like in some proverbial way. Like you're changing people's actual physical lives.
Not only the customer, but the patient who's on the table. You're changing their life. I mean, if you can take a patient from having to have an open surgery to walking out the same day with a minimally invasive procedure, think about the quality of life you just gave that person. Think about the reduction of risk and the problems that can go along with an open surgery.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Could any of our listeners have a Cooke product inside their body right now?
I'm almost certain they do at some point. Or they've had a Cooke product used on them. If you've been in the hospital and you've had some sort of procedure, it's very likely you've had a Cooke product used. So a lot of our implantable devices are things like stents. So we don't make stents that go in the heart. Other companies make those. We make stents that go in people's legs. So sometimes your arteries can get blocked in your legs too, and it makes it hard to walk, and you get pain when you walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we make products that help treat those types of diseases.
So you would go in, put a stent in that artery. It makes blood flow better, makes your legs, all of the positives that come from proper blood flow to your legs are made better because of that.
Well, yeah. So the pain that you get when people it's called peripheral arterial disease. The pain that you get is because it's like your leg muscles are having a heart attack almost. They're not getting the blood they need to get the oxygen and be able to help you walk.
So that, I mean, stents of all kinds are, people could have in their body. Obviously.
Have aneurysms. People have aneurysms.
Yeah.
So there's a vessel that runs from your heart. It's called your aorta. It runs from your heart all the way down to your pelvis, and that splits and feeds your legs with blood. Sometimes those vessel walls can get weakened, and if they rupture, that's a very bad thing.
Yeah.
That's
an aneurysm.
A lot of people die from that.
Yeah.
So what we do is we make a tube that goes in that blocks off that weakened section of the wall, but blood can still flow through.
Yeah.
In fact, and my dad won't mind me telling this because I've talked about it publicly. He has had one of those devices now for 10 years. And he actually has one of the stents that props open the blood vessels in your leg. So I always joke around. You tell him he's a walking Cooke billboard.
Right. He's got good Cooke products helping him have blood flow in multiple places of his body.
And and he says this. He's like, his parents died before they met their grandchildren. And he says, without these Cooke products, I would not know my grandchildren.
Wow.
That's a huge thing. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
And I remember the day when he had this aneurysm. He came and said, "Hey, I've got this issue. Do you guys know anything about it?" And we of course we did. We can talk about quality and you can talk about making products that matter for people, but when all of a sudden it's your family member saying to you, "Hey, Pete, I'm thinking about getting one of your products." Is that the right move? To be able to answer that question and be able to say absolutely yes, because the culture of the company, the people that are making it, that makes it pretty real really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go down that road a little bit. So you make these products go into people's bodies that are a big part of their quality of life. And so I would imagine that as your process in your business, you have a super high level of correctness, or whatever the right word is, for making sure that every step of every process is done right, is done well, and that the product comes out of your space into the health industry at the highest quality possible. Which makes me wonder, what some of the things are you do inside of the business to make that work? If zero mistakes can be made, how, and obviously that's not exactly true, but if the idea is to have zero mistakes made, what are the systems on the surface level that you use to make sure the quality is good? That question took me so long to ask. I apologize about that. But.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It is. We're making products that can, if we do it right, they save people's lives.
Yeah.
If we do it wrong, you can have a different outcome for somebody.
Yeah.
It's really important. So there's a lot of things that we do to make sure that we get the highest possible quality. And what you said about zero, unfortunately, is never true.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. Medicine is hard.
Yeah.
And medicine is tricky. And there's never perfect procedures. There's never perfect medicine. There's never perfect devices. Everything has a risk. Everything, you're always shooting for perfection, but the reality is you can never get there.
It's funny because we think about medicine, because it's about our bodies, as this zero mistake world. And the reality from a doctor's perspective, from a manufacturer's perspective, from everyone involved is it's just like any other industry where people really truly are trying to do the best they can. And yet perfection is not any different than any other business almost.
Yeah. And sometimes, there's just so many variables involved. It may not even be a mistake. It may just be sometimes that anatomy was too complex, or sometimes it just wasn't an option.
Yeah.
But we do so much to try to make sure the quality is as high as it can be.
Yeah.
For me, it starts with the culture of your company. So we talk all the time, and we spend so much time talking to our people about do what's right for patients first.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Make sure that we're making decisions based on the patient. If you start there, pretty much all the rest of it comes along. Right?
Yeah.
If you start thinking about what's the cost of that,
right?
What's the impact to our revenue going to be, then you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. If
you start with what's the impact of the patient, then you usually almost always make the right decision. Now, they're always tough calls. I'll give you an example. I'll use a hypothetical example. You treat 10,000 patients, and one patient may have a bad outcome.
Okay.
Maybe it leads to a second surgery. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's 3 or 4 patients.
Still seems like a good rate. But
right.
Yeah.
But if you're one of those 3 or 4 patients that's not, you didn't get the outcome that you wanted.
Right.
How do you assess that risk? How do you assess the benefit that you've given to 10,000 patients versus the experience those 3 or 4 patients had?
Yeah.
You're always trying to make those 3 or 4 patients better than what, have that outcome be better for them. But sometimes it's not possible. Those are when it gets hard, right? How do you make those decisions about what risk can be acceptable and what's not? And our team spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we're reducing risk wherever we can,
right,
and making the procedure as safe as it can be for patients.
Yeah. I mean, you said 1 person or 3 people out of 10,000. I'm like, that's an amazing rate.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. If you're one of those 3, it feels a lot different.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of what you're doing and how you're figuring things out.
And it's hard, right? We would love to have every procedure be perfect.
Yeah.
It's just not always possible.
Sure. Well, all the variables, I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So Bill Cooke, like we've talked about, started the business. He not only was a visionary entrepreneur in all the ways you talked about, was also a philanthropist in a way that don't know who else to even compare him to, really. In Southern Indiana, you look around and there are prints of Bill and Gail Cooke all over. How do you take that and turn it forward and look at kind of how Cooke Medical can affect maybe our town, maybe our state, maybe our country into the future?
Mm-hmm. That is an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And it's because the legacy the Cooke family has developed over the years is so extensive and so impressive that you have to always respect what they've done.
Yeah.
And by respect, I mean you have to make sure that you're playing within that energy. They have been so involved in historic preservation.
Yeah.
And the buildings that we've redone for manufacturing have been part of that historic preservation.
Absolutely.
So when we think about the option of, taking on a new building, I'll give you an example. We acquired an old GE refrigeration plant on the west side of Bloomington. Mm-hmm. That's an opportunity for us to say that building supported thousands and thousands of families over the year in Bloomington. Mm-hmm. But it was shuttered. It was closed down. How do we take that and rebuild that and make it again something that can support thousands of families? That's exciting, and that's what I mean by being that same energy that they built as a company.
Yeah, and I think one of the thoughts I had as you were describing that is you want to let his legacy be his legacy too. Like in some ways, you don't take someone's life vision and just turn it forward after they pass and try and continue it, because that was their vision. That's not your vision. And so to turn forward and say, okay, what are the things that our business, the business created by that founder, can continue to do to make the world better, to make our town better, and all those kinds of things that may or may not have anything to do with the vision that Bill and Gail have, but what the vision is that makes the most sense into the future. Those two things don't have to be connected necessarily.
Well, right. So you also don't want to just build museums. You know what I mean? Like, so you do something, and that was the way we did it in 1985. So this is the way we're always going to do it, and it's going to stay the same and never change.
Yeah,
that's a challenge, because there's sometimes an inertia to that. The organization feels like, well, now you hear it still sometimes. Somebody will say, well, Bill said this. Well, that was 20 years ago.
Right.
And if Bill were still here today, he would probably say something different because times have changed and we do things differently now. So You have to be careful about that.
Yeah, it's almost founder syndrome, like from other people beyond the founder. Like, and when the founder's not there anymore, those things that were said 20 years ago become what was said.
Absolutely.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to dig into kind of the medical industry a little bit. You all have a lot of insight into how it's working, and I'm interested in that, and we'll do that. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Scratch Entrepreneur is brought to you by Shine Insurance. At Shine, our goal is simple: to change the way you feel about insurance. Start that evolution today at shineinsurance.com. We are back with Pete Yonkman of Cooke Medical. He is the president of Cooke Medical and Cooke Group. Pete, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
So as a medical product manufacturer, you all interact with not only the American healthcare system, but I think probably other countries as well. What are your insights about specifically really the American healthcare system, maybe as it relates to other places? What are some of the things that are working well, and what are maybe some struggles you have working inside that system?
Well, you're right. So we touch just about every healthcare system in the world of any, that has sort of modern healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're all very different. They all have very different ways of how healthcare is provided, whether it's through the government provides it or it's insurance or people private pay for it. Mm-hmm. They're all very different. And I also had the opportunity to travel around the world visiting our Cooke facilities and seeing different countries. If I had a choice and I was going to have a serious medical issue anywhere in the world, 100% you want to be in the United States.
Yeah.
It's just a better system.
Why? Like, what is it that's better about it here?
There's a lot of different factors to it. So there are a lot of physicians who have a lot of history with procedures.
So like knowledge.
There's the knowledge base.
Yeah.
The countries in the Middle East, for example, like Dubai, when they're trying to build these mega centers, mm-hmm. they do crazy things to try to get that knowledge there. They'll charter planes to ask physicians to come over and teach their, so everybody's trying to come to the United States in some way for the system. There are great physicians all over the world. Don't get me wrong, but just in general, if I had to be sick in any healthcare system in the world, I'd want to be right here in the United States.
And the biggest reason is the depth of the knowledge base and the physicians that integrate that medicine.
And the quality of the care, so the quality of the facilities, the protocols that are in place to get people, you may hear hospitals talk about the time it takes when you hit the door, if you're having a heart attack, how long it takes you to get a stent.
Yeah.
They want less than 90 minutes. Or if you're having a stroke, how long it takes you to get that clot resolved or for that stroke to be resolved. Mm-hmm. Those things, those types of procedures and systems and support structures that are available aren't always available in other countries.
Huh. Yeah.
And so there's just this integrated care philosophy that is not always permeated elsewhere.
And that's not only life or death, but quality of life after stroke or quality of life after heart attack.
The rehabilitation centers, all of that.
Yeah. And even the time it takes to get that stent in or to deal with that clot, like if it takes 2 hours as opposed to 1 hour, there's a huge difference in maybe the outcome for you as a human being after that stroke or after, Yeah.
If you're having a stroke, every minute is part of your brain dying.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if it takes an extra 60 minutes, that's a big impact on your quality of life.
Yeah. So the U.S. health system is where you want to be. And you obviously have seen a lot of them. So that makes sense.
And like I said, there are great physicians everywhere. Yeah. It's just the totality of the system. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have challenges of getting more people covered and all of that.
Right.
But the structure of it and the quality of care, if you're in the healthcare system, the quality of care is incredible.
Yeah. So are there steps that we could take or maybe other countries could take to elevate our systems in general?
Here in the United States?
Yeah, let's stay in the United States. How could we elevate our systems here in the United States?
Well, it's happening, but one of the biggest thing is data.
Yeah.
So every industry, this is happening to big data, right? So if you're a patient and you're on certain medications, we want to know, are you taking those medicines? When you hit the door for a medical problem, what protocol are we following to get you better? Mm-hmm. Did we diagnose you the right way? What imaging do we use? All of that data is being collected every day, but it's not being harnessed yet to its full capacity. So think about how much data and information is being collected about you just in your daily life.
Just on Google or whatever.
But in the healthcare system, it's exponentially more when you're having imaging done or you're having diagnostic tests, blood work. putting all that together and then putting that together for millions and millions of patients and looking at the results and seeing how could we get you through the door 5 minutes faster to get that stroke dealt with.
We're talking about big information now, and a ton of that information just sits like somewhere and is never necessarily analyzed. The better we can get at analyzing all of the information, the quicker we can get, the better our systems can be, and the better life experience people can have after.
Yeah. Medicine for so long was sort of an art. If you go back 20, 30 years, individual physician was the artist. I have my training, I'm using my best judgment, and I'm going to give you a treatment.
Mm-hmm.
What it's becoming is data science.
Yeah.
So rather than just looking at you, let's look at 2 million people just like you and see what variables are in there. And let's determine which variables affect the outcome. And let's change those to improve it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's really exciting time for medicine. It's not there yet. That data is really hard to get, hard to analyze, hard to make sure that it's apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming pretty fast.
Huh. So are there any directions you see American medicine going that you're concerned about?
I don't know that I'm concerned about it. I think one thing that will be a big change for medicine is, and people probably don't think about this as much, but physicians used to be in what was known as private practice, right? You get out of medical school and you go to private practice and then you contract with a hospital or what your patients come to see you. And the way physicians made money was they had patients who paid them.
Yeah.
What's happening is physicians are becoming employed. They're becoming employees of hospitals.
Right.
So rather than getting paid by how many patients I see or whatever, I'm getting paid by as a salary of I'm an employee. And there's some really great things about that. It gets everybody bought into, we're going to work together as a team. Right. We're going to, be parts of this bigger picture. What also is happening is I think people, especially the younger generations, are coming up and saying, I saw my dad, who was a doctor, work 70, 80 hours a week for his entire life.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to do that.
Right.
So there's already a critical shortage of physicians, nurses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I worry whether or not as a system we're going to be able to adapt to our new structure that we're developing and also be able to have the number of providers that we need. Yeah.
Huh. So the new system makes sense on some levels. There's not the competition from a lot of different practices that are essentially doing the same thing around the same hospital. So that's a positive. But the negative is I don't get the connection with why physicians don't come up into that because there's just not as much buy-in into like owning your own business. No,
the model has just changed. So it became too hard. So there are all these small, it still happens, but in general, it became very hard for physicians to, I have to buy my own accounting software. I have to do my own data entry.
Yeah.
If I become an employee of a hospital,
it's just easier.
All that stuff is done for me. Now I can practice medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. And the insurance paperwork is a huge part. I know when I go to my doctor, she's like, well, I'm going to work on patients till 4:00. And then from 4 to 8 every day, I deal with paperwork. And it's like, if you take that out of the physician's world, then they can do what they're good at, that kind of stuff.
I'm not a doctor, but I'm certain nobody went to medical school to spend 3 hours a day doing paperwork.
No, right? I know.
Nobody wants to do that.
And no one wants I don't want my doctor doing that either. Like I want her to be doing what she's, supposed to be doing for sure. Okay. Anything else about the medical industry that we missed that might be important to dig into?
Oh, there's so much there, but no, I think we hit the big topics.
We hit the surface. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're just going to talk about being a business owner, being the president of a business, and how that we, maybe some advice for entrepreneurs.
Great.
Hey there, quick ad for Shine Insurance. Thought I'd talk a little bit today about flood insurance. Natural rising of water or flood is not included in most property policies, period. Homeowner's policy, investment property, your business property likely does not have a flood insurance policy. So if you're in a high-risk flood zone, you definitely want to consider a flood insurance policy. And even if you're not, you may want to consider coverage for the natural rising of water. It's usually backed by FEMA. There are some other types of policies, though. Check out what you have, what you don't have, and feel free to give us a buzz at Shine if you want to get some answers on that. 812-679-8779. Now, back to the show. All right, we're back with Pete Yonkman, president
of Cooke Medical and Cooke Group. Pete, again, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Cool. So you guys are deeply involved in our community in a lot of different ways. And I know a part of that is just to do good, but it seems like there's a value beyond. Can you describe what's important about developing a relationship with a community?
If you go back in the history of Cooke, there's always been a commitment to, as I said, commitment to patients. There's this really strong commitment to employees. So one of the first things I learned at Cooke is you can't treat people like a number. These people are not numbers. These are people with families, hopes and dreams, and it's our job to help them improve their lives.
Yeah.
But then also there's a really strong commitment to the community. So wherever we live and work, you can't just take from the community. You have to give back, right? So that's been put in the DNA of all of us who've been there for any amount of time. Just watching the Cooke family, how they behave and what they do and their belief system.
Yeah.
We've watched that.
So what's an example of something maybe that's happened recently where it was an opportunity to connect with the community and do what you're describing, like create that community development?
Yeah, there's lots of things that way. So just being here at the Dimension Mill, I think is a great example. We've been supportive of the Dimension Mill. We're a sponsor of the Dimension Mill. And to be honest, there probably isn't a natural connection between what we do and what happens here at the mill. But if you look at the effort the community is putting into this project, right? The investment by the city, the people who have already signed up and who are trying to help build the culture and get it off the ground.
Yeah.
That's really important for a community. As I said, data is becoming part of our everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, that's the connection, right? This is obviously a tech incubator that we're in right now, and there could be the data connection is one potential connection.
One potential connection.
Yeah.
But I think any community that's going to thrive going forward is going to have a sector that is involved in this data revolution.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's great for us for a lot of reasons. One, because it makes the community better. Yeah. It makes the community vibrant. It creates opportunities for when we recruit people, their spouse may be in this industry. It gives an opportunity for their spouse to find jobs.
Absolutely.
It's good for everybody involved. So that's an example of why we support something like the mill, because it's not it's not a direct one-to-one benefit. It's not a business benefit. It's a community benefit. It makes it better for our employees who work here and for people we want to recruit, and it's just a better experience for the whole community.
You probably get a lot of requests. It just dawned on me that as a business, Cooke gets requests probably 10 a day or something. I don't know what it is. Like, how do you decide how to connect with the community and how to say no? I think any business owner has that experience. Like, how do I say yes? How do I say no? What are the parameters?
Absolutely, we have that. We get so many requests. We try to first start off by saying, what's the impact? Does it have a broad impact to the community, as opposed to sponsoring one person's child to go on a trip to France?
Right. Yeah.
Those don't have much of a community impact.
Not very broad impact. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we try to say how the broader the impact, the better. Particularly around things like education. So we're big believers in education and workforce development and getting people the tools they need to be successful. We have initiatives ongoing. We're part of a coalition of folks in town who are looking at substance use disorder and trying to bring together people around the table to say, there are so many stakeholders here. There's so many people doing great work in Bloomington around substance abuse. How do we make sure that we're all coordinated and that we have focus and alignment around how do we solve these issues and how do we make sure we're putting the resources the right way? Those are things that have broad community impact.
Absolutely.
And we're excited about being involved in.
That makes sense. So it's like, in that example, it's like an issue, a problem that's going on in the community that may or may not affect your team, but certainly affects the community as a whole. How can we address that in a way that's, so you're putting money towards how to make the way that we address it comprehensive around the community. So if there's 6 or 7 different entities that are all trying to address it, somehow it brings it together. Is that a fair?
Yes. How can we help put everybody around the table?
Yeah.
And figure out how to, and we also have, for us, I think it's natural when we think about complex systems, which is really what you have here in Bloomington when you think about all the different providers.
Yeah.
It's a complex, disconnected system. One of the things we do in a business is look at those situations and go, oh, we can align that. We can make it more efficient. We can make it fit better together. And so that's what we're trying to bring to the table is just say, hey, we're not here to do, you guys are doing great work. We just want to help make sure everybody's on the same page and get aligned and making sure we're all working towards the same objective.
That's cool. So in that example, a small business could support probably more easily one of those elements that you just described. There's 6 or 7 people doing the same thing to address substance abuse.
Yeah.
And a smaller business like mine could maybe help one of those elements because the financial relationship is there. A larger business like yours can actually say, look, we can help to bring this thing together. We have maybe a little bit more in the way of funds that we can address it and actually coalesce what we're trying to solve together with everyone else.
And in this instance, I don't know that we've had to spend any money so far. What we've done is just said, hey, can we provide a conference room and bring everybody to the table and provide some leadership and help in trying to get people to work together? So we put together a coalition. We've created some subcommittees focused around different issues like obstacles to getting people into detox. There are some insurance obstacles. There are some entry requirements that are obstacles. So we've got people working on that. We've got people looking at alternatives. Rather than having to take somebody to jail if they're actively using, we can find an alternative place for them to go.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that I think the community can work on, and I've been very impressed. The stakeholders in this example, everybody has really rallied around and said, let's make this something that is bigger than just ourselves, right? We're all working on this little piece of it, but let's all try to work together and really make an impact on the problem.
That's awesome. It's a big problem in Southern Indiana and around our country, I know. And so to be able to bring that together and some of the things you just described, I'd heard having scenarios where police can have other options than jail, is one of the things that I'd heard. And so that's
and the emergency room.
Cool
So sometimes the other option is the emergency room. Well, that's not a great option either, right? So people go into the emergency room. It's expensive. They're really not set up to deal with those kinds of issues. So we're trying to find a pathway that's a little bit different.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate all the work that you guys do in our community for our community as a whole and for specific issues like that.
Yeah. And, I think for, like you said, like for a business that's not as big, maybe like your business,
Yeah.
It would be great for you, I think, if you had from this coalition, we could say, here's the strategy we have as a community going forward. These are the areas where we need some help. We need philanthropy here, or we need resources here. It'd be a way for you to say, oh, great. I feel good about putting my money because I know they've all worked together, or my time because I know exactly how I'm going to have an impact on this strategy.
That makes, absolutely. And I think that as small businesses, we kind of need that. Like how, we're also getting a lot of requests with a lot of different things. And if someone says, hey, here's the role you play, here's how you can help either with your time or with your money, and here's how the greater picture is addressing the situation, then it's like, okay, I'll be a part of this. This sounds great.
Yeah, right. Give you something to bounce off of and to plug into.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's go to employees just real quickly. I mean, you have how many employees are part of your business?
Well, globally, we have almost 13,000.
Okay.
And then in Indiana, we have about 9,000. In South Central Indiana, it's about 5,000 to 6,000.
How do you attract and keep great people? That's a broad question, but I'm curious.
Yeah. It goes back to the culture again for me.
Yeah.
So I get an opportunity every week. We have every month. We have an orientation class that comes in for all new employees, and they spend about a week going through orientation, where we give them the history, we give them some of the culture, we give them tours and all that. And I'm always the last person to go because I want to hear how that week has been.
Yeah. And
I'm always blown away by how surprised people are at the culture, because they come from all different companies, right? We're recruiting people from all over the place. Every month I go there, and they're like, wow, this is so different. And I ask, okay, why is it different?
Yeah.
People are nice. People that work here are nice. They seem to genuinely care about you, and they want you to succeed, and they're here to help. Now, it's so simple, but isn't that a sad statement of what has happened to our corporate cultures across the country? Because that just seems like normal human decency to me.
Yeah. But it's totally the case, right? Like you can experience a different culture in one place or another. And I've always wondered, like, besides just being good, because that comes natural and I get that, but is there some action you take in your like, we're going to be nice? Like, I don't know. Like what's the action that helps? Because it does seem like some businesses, people just don't feel like they need to be nice, or in some businesses, people are really happy to be there, and what the foundation of it, I don't know.
The foundation of it is the family. So it always starts with that DNA foundation, how you set up that organization.
We're in this together. We are together. We are family. We're going to take
and
care
what
of
you
each
emphasize, right? So if the Cooke family is out there saying profit, profit, profit every day, what do you think you get? You get a culture that was focused only around profit.
You get a bunch of people who think that my boss wants to make a bunch of money.
At all costs. If you say patients, employees, community, over and over and over again for 55 years, you get a different focus and you get a different. Now, I will tell you there are some challenges that come with that because people sometimes lose focus on, well, we're still a business and we've got to make money and we have to improve and we have to be profitable. But we've addressed that. But whether you're starting a business as one person or two people, as soon as you get to two, you're starting to create a culture.
Absolutely. Yep.
And what the leader starts to focus on is what that second person will focus on, and they'll get past the third, fourth, and fifth. And that's how you either build a culture that is toxic or that treats people like family.
It's just what you do every day as a founder, as a leader, as a president or CEO, all the way through the system. That's, I guess, the bottom line really is, what do you do every day? How do you treat people every day? What are your motivations every day? And
what do you shine a light on? So, if you're leading in any capacity, at some level, one of the most important things you do is you shine a spotlight on something, whether it's through how you talk about it at a meeting, whether it's through an email that you write, whether it's through the business plan that you develop. You're putting a spotlight on that. And if you focus that light on the wrong things for too long, people will move to that light and they'll move to the wrong things.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about what you focus your light on.
It's super true. And even we only have a few employees, but I think the same is true. You can tell if you have a bad attitude, you're going to push that off. And so it behooves you to do it for the right reasons and have a good attitude about how you're moving forward. And if there are things you struggle with, then, find that proper outlet that isn't kind of just throwing it out at your team or whatever.
Well, it's probably even more true, I would say, when you have 2 or 3 employees. Because if you walk in the morning and you're cursing at everybody and you're yelling and kicking the dog, that's going to have a big impact on those 2 people.
on the whole business in that example, right?
Now, if I did it, most of the people are never going to see it. Right.
That's true.
Not at first, but over time they would, but at first, no.
Yeah. So as the president of a business, you do a lot of different things and you do a lot of them well. You're well respected by your staff and everyone. I wonder, what's one thing about being a business owner or president of a business that you don't do well?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I think there's very different roles of being an owner, which I'm not, and then trying to run a business for the owners of a company.
Right.
Those are very different things. But so one of the things I know I don't do well, and this is why we moved a person into our HR role. Her name is Nikki James, and she's our VP of HR and Talent Development. Yeah. And she is one of the most empathetic people I know. She knows when somebody's kid is sick. She knows if the family's having a hard time or if that person's having a hard time. I don't know how she knows it. She just knows it.
She does, yeah.
Sometimes I can be oblivious to that stuff, and I don't know why. It's just, I'm focused on other things. And so she's always like, hey, idiot, that person's having a hard time,
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to surround yourself with people who help you overcome your weakness.
Yeah. My wife and I own the business together, and I sometimes struggle with human empathy too, and she helps to make sure that happens, and it works out great.
Yeah.
Cool. When you look down the road 10 years from now, where do you see Cooke?
I hope that after the next 10 years, people will say Cooke has worked hard to remain relevant as an employer. They're innovating new technologies, and they're as innovative as they ever were, that we're helping patients maybe in new areas of medicine that we aren't in today, because we continue to expand and help our knowledge base grow and all of that. And I also hope that people say, but it's still at its core is this family company that is unique, unfortunately, maybe in American culture.
Yeah.
I just have such tremendous respect for what an institution like this can do when you have the size and the scope of it and the collective talents of that many people. You can have unbelievable impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. Especially in the world that you guys are working in.
The patients that we serve, the employees in our communities. I sometimes wonder why every company wouldn't want to do that. If you can, why wouldn't you want to? A lot of companies do, I know. But a lot of companies are so focused on the bottom line. I hope that 10 years from now, we look back and we go, we still have that at our core. We still believe in helping people and our employees and the communities.
Yeah, we're still fighting for people. We're still trying to figure out how to take the next step in helping with wherever medicine goes. Whatever 10 years from now is a long time, right? It'd be completely different. Okay, last question. Is there one specific thing down the road on the medicine side that you see that you're working on now that you're excited about where it could go?
Yeah. Well, we have so many different areas of medicine. There are lots of them. I'll give you a few examples. One is the world is, when in the 50s and 60s, when Bill was starting the business, it was a very mechanical world. You know, a wire and a catheter and a needle. Mm-hmm. The world's becoming less mechanical in some ways, and sometimes more biologic or imaging based. So, for example, we have a company in Annapolis that's called Cooke Regen, and they're looking at things where they use the cells from your body and treat a disease as opposed to a mechanical device. They're using cells and cell therapy and genetic therapy.
So cells would actually do the action, whatever that action is you're
as
trying to take.
As opposed to some balloon or whatever.
Wow.
You know, so that they're figuring out how to use the body's own resources as the scaffolding or the ability to fix something.
Wow.
That's pretty exciting and brings in a whole new level of diseases that can be treated. It brings in a whole new level of permanence. So that if you can use your own body to restructure itself, then you have a longer term outcome than you might have with a piece of metal or a piece of plastic.
Totally, absolutely, and like a lower bar to entry and a lot of different things like that.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. Well, we'll have to sit down in 10 years and talk about.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Pete, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your time to chat on Scratch Entrepreneur. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity. I love what you guys are doing here at the mill because, as I said, it's so important for our community. And to be able to spread the word like this, and I know your involvement in the studio has been significant. So thank you for doing this and giving people the opportunity to be heard.
Oh, absolutely. It's our pleasure. And if people want to find you for your products or just check out more about Cooke, how could they do so?
Just go to cookemedical.com.
Okay, cool. Pete, it's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Special thanks to Pete Yonkman for taking the time to share the Cooke medical story with us. Contributors to this episode include the host, me, Jeremy Goodrich. The music is by my good friend Mark Vinten. Audio editing is by Christopher Lang, and the show notes are by our new member of the Shine team and our Scratch Entrepreneur copy editor, Talia Chakraborty. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple of things we need you to do right now. First, subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please rate and review the show. We would love to hear what you loved, what you didn't, and what you want to hear next. If you'd like to join any of our communities, you can check us out on Scratch Entrepreneur, our Facebook page there, and Patreon, we have a page as well. Until the next time, we truly appreciate you listening.